Your dog sits when you tell it to. It rolls over for a treat. It sleeps on a bed that costs more than most people's furniture. 15,000 years ago, that same animal was a wolf. It didn't sit. It didn't roll over. It ate things that were still alive. And somehow, one night, a human looked at that creature and thought, I want that thing to live with me. No leash, no collar, no training manual, just two species on opposite sides of a fire, deciding to trust each other. That was the beginning of the oldest friendship on Earth. But here's the thing nobody tells you about that friendship. You didn't start it. The wolf did. For a long time, the popular story went like this. A brave hunter finds a wolf pup, brings it back to camp, raises it by hand, and tames it. Nice story. Almost certainly wrong. Wolves are not animals you walk up to and befriend. An adult wolf has a bite force of 400 pounds per square inch, nearly double a German shepherd's. They hunt in coordinated packs. They take down elk, bison, and moose. They defend territory with lethal force. You don't walk up to that with a piece of leftover meat and hope for the best. You run. So how did we end up sharing a bed with one? The leading theory is called self-domestication, and it's stranger than anything you'd make up. Somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago, some wolves started doing something no wolf had done before. They stopped running from humans. The bolder ones, the less fearful ones, started lingering at the edges of campsites, not to attack, to scavenge. Your ancestors threw bones and scraps into the dark after every meal. The wolves that were calm enough to eat near a fire got fed. The ones that ran stayed hungry. Over time, a split happened. The calm wolves bred with other calm wolves. Their pups were calmer still, and those pups bred, and their pups after that. Generation after generation, the wolves that tolerated humans outsurvived the ones that didn't. Nobody planned this. Nobody controlled it. Over hundreds, maybe thousands of years, a new animal emerged at the edge of camp. It looked like a wolf. It moved like a wolf, but it didn't act like one. No one domesticated the first dog. The first dog domesticated itself because being near you was a better strategy than being afraid of you. And we know this can happen because someone proved it. In 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev decided to test the whole idea. He took wild silver foxes, animals that would take your finger off if you reached into their cage, and started breeding only the tamest ones. The single criteria was fear. Whichever fox flinched the least around humans got to reproduce. That's it. Nothing else. Within 8 generations, the foxes started wagging their tails. By 20 generations, they were licking researchers' faces. By 40, they had floppy ears, curled tails, spotted coats, and smaller skulls. They looked like puppies. In 40 generations. That's nothing. In human terms, less than 1,000 years. Here's what's wild about that. Nobody selected for floppy ears. Nobody asked for spotted fur. Those traits just showed up on their own, like side effects of becoming friendly. Tameness rewired the entire animal from the inside out, and the exact same thing happened to wolves on their way to becoming dogs. Their skulls shrank, their teeth got smaller, their ears flopped, their coats exploded into colors no wolf had ever worn. They didn't just change how they behaved, they changed what they were, all because they chose to sit near a fire instead of running from it. But when did these new animals actually start working alongside humans? The oldest clue might be pressed into mud in Chauvet Cave, southern France. 26,000 years ago, a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, walked deep into the darkness, and beside every single one of the child's footprints was a second set of tracks, a large canine, not behind the child, not circling, walking beside them, step for step, through total darkness. Some researchers say it was a wolf, others say the gait and stride pattern match a partially domesticated animal. Either way, something walked with that child into the dark, and it wasn't there by accident. But the moment that tells you the most about this relationship isn't a footprint, it's a grave. In 1914, quarry workers in Bonn-Oberkassel, Germany, cracked open a basalt block and found 2 human skeletons, buried alongside the skeleton of a dog. The burial was 14,200 years old. But here's what makes it extraordinary. When veterinary scientists re-examined the dog's remains in 2018, they discovered the animal had been severely ill as a puppy. Canine distemper, a disease that would have killed it within weeks, without constant care. Someone had kept that sick puppy alive, fed it by hand, cleaned up after it, nursed it through weeks of illness when it was completely useless to anyone. It couldn't hunt, it couldn't guard, it couldn't do a single useful thing except be sick and need help. And they helped it anyway. And when all 3 of them died, Someone buried the dog with the humans. Same grave, same care, same goodbye. That is not a working animal. That is family, 14,000 years ago. And yet for most of the time dogs and humans have been together, the relationship was not about affection. It was about not dying. The first real job dogs ever had was hunting. Not fetching, not sitting pretty, hunting. In Australia, Aboriginal peoples partnered with dingoes for thousands of years. The dogs tracked and flushed game, driving animals straight toward hunters waiting with spears. In return, they ate. On freezing desert nights, people slept curled against them for warmth. That's actually where the expression three-dog night comes from. A night so cold you needed 3 dogs on top of you just to survive. In the Arctic, dogs hauled sleds loaded with everything a family owned across ice that would kill a person walking alone. Every continent, every climate, every landscape humans entered, dogs were right beside them. And everywhere dogs showed up, the humans who had them outlived the ones who didn't. So how did your ancestors actually train these animals? Here's what might surprise you. They mostly didn't. Not the way you think of training. There were no commands, no hand signals, no treats dangled above a nose until it sat down. Nobody clapped and said, "Good boy." The whole thing was built on something much older than obedience. Proximity. A dog that grew up in a human camp from birth learned to read people the way you learned to read your parents. Not through instructions, through years of watching. Where do the humans go in the morning? What makes them tense? When do they pick up the spear versus the digging stick? The dog absorbed all of it, silently, constantly. And the humans watched the dog right back. This wasn't a command and reward system. This was a conversation between two species that had been paying attention to each other for thousands of years. A researcher named Brian Hare at Duke University proved just how deep this runs. He put 2 cups in front of an animal, pointed at one, and checked whether the animal went to the right cup. Dogs nail it almost every time. Wolves raised by humans from birth cannot do it. Chimpanzees, your closest genetic relatives with 98% of your DNA, can't reliably do it either. Your dog reads your body language better than any animal on Earth, including the great apes. And it didn't learn this in a 6-week obedience class, it evolved it. Over thousands of years of living beside you, the dogs that could follow a glance, read a gesture, anticipate what you wanted before you moved, those dogs got fed, those dogs got kept, those dogs had puppies, and those puppies understood you, even better than their parents did. Training wasn't a technique, it was evolution, running in real time, one campfire generation at a time. And here's the part that might change how you look at your dog tonight. In 2015, a Japanese researcher named Miho Nagasawa published a study that found something no one expected. When a dog and its owner look into each other's eyes, both of their brains release oxytocin, the same hormone that floods a mother's brain when she holds her newborn child. The exact same chemical, the exact same neural pathway. Wolves don't trigger this response in humans, cats don't, horses don't, only dogs. Somewhere in the last 15,000 years, your dog evolved the ability to hijack your parental bonding system, and you evolved to let it. When your dog stares at you from across the room, your brain literally cannot tell the difference between that and your own child looking at you. That is not something a trainer built. That is a bond written into your biology by 15,000 years of shared history. Every breed you've ever seen, every golden retriever, every poodle, every chihuahua small enough to ride in a handbag, was created in the last 200 years. 2 centuries out of 15,000. That's the last 1.3%. For the other 98.7% of the time dogs have existed, they all looked roughly the same. Medium-sized, short-haired, prick-eared, lean, built to run. You can still see them today. They're called village dogs, and they make up roughly 80% of all the dogs on Earth. They roam freely through towns across Africa, Asia, and South America. Nobody trained them. Nobody owns them. They follow humans. Because that's what dogs have done since before civilization existed. They are the closest thing alive to the first dog that ever sat beside a human being and chose to stay. You spend money on trainers and leashes and obedience classes trying to teach your dog to behave. Your ancestors had a fire, some leftover bones, and 10,000 years of patience. They didn't train dogs the way you do because they didn't need to. The dogs were already paying attention. They'd been watching humans since before we were a species worth watching. And that thing you feel when your dog falls asleep on your feet, or rests its head on your knee for no reason, or stands at the door waiting before you've even reached for your keys, that wasn't taught. Not by a trainer, not by a YouTube video, not by anyone. It's 15,000 years old. It started with a wolf that was too curious to run, and a human that was too lonely to throw a stone. They didn't know what they were building. They just sat by the fire. The wolf moved a little closer, and the human let it stay.